Man, what a week we've had here. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was younger, we'd go to Mass on Easter Sunday, and then my mother got this cockamamie idea that we should do this thing called the Vigil sometime. And growing up in the 70s in suburban Boston, I'm like, Mom, it's a Saturday night. Why do we have to go to church on a Saturday night? And she's like, it's good. And then you get exposed to that, and as a kid, and for all you kids here, if you think this is going to be something today, you should have been here last night. 3 hours and 15 minutes of vigiling, But I guess the Greeks take like 6 hours. They go all night long, But then something happened. It wasn't just about having to go to church. They did this other thing on Thursday night of Holy Week, the washing of the feet. And typically, again, this is in the 70s, the priest would wash the feet of the 12 parish council men, right? And it was kind of the thing that they did. And then Good Friday, the Passion, the cross. But Sunday, for me, Easter Sunday, in the mean streets of North Reading, it was all about chocolate. I can finally eat chocolate, It was the great spiritual endurance test had ended, And now we could finally eat those hollow Easter bunnies, and every once in a while there was a solid one in there. It was great, I don't know, can anybody relate? No? Am I dating myself? I know I am, so anyway. But this week, here and throughout the world, we got together these nights. And I'm going to tell you something. This church was filled. As I remember back in the day, it was a few people who went. It was kind of out of the norm from the Sunday rhythm and routine. But this community here at St. Cecilia, of which you are a part, whether you're here week after week, whether you come in from the North Shore or the South, if you're here once a year, if this is your first time, I want you to know that this is more than a building. It's more than an institutional franchise. This is a community. And it's a community where I hope we understand a little bit more deeply what this business of the risen Lord is all about. And not just hope by the time we get to that last breath that we bet on the right team. Okay, I'm a believer, I hope that during life and the time that we've been given, that somehow our belief system in believing in Jesus as risen from the dead will affect you and me and give us the tools that we need to deal with all that life throws at us. Because there's a lot of bad stuff that gets thrown at us in life. Stuff that we don't deserve, that we didn't do, that gets done to us. There's unjust stuff. There's unfair stuff. But I do think that belief in the resurrection can really inform our hearts and our minds as to how we're going to deal with that stuff. It's like the Serenity Prayer. My friends in 12-step always talk about that, That acceptance of trying to live life on life's terms. God, grant me the serenity, the peace to accept the things I can't change. Give me that courage to change what I can. And then so importantly, from the Spirit, give us the wisdom to know that difference, That prayer comes from a belief, I believe, in the resurrection, knowing that death doesn't have the last word. And this week, we celebrated all of this. Holy Thursday, we gathered, and we didn't just have the 12 men on the parish council, because we don't have all men on the parish council, This whole community came up, and when Jesus says, listen, guys, as you can see in the original Leonardo da Vinci painting that we have here at St. Cecilia, that's a well-kept secret, by the way. He's basically saying, before we break bread, I know what's coming. That was not the first or the middle supper. That was the what? That was it. He says, before I go, I'm going to give you a model of how to be. And so he takes off his cloak, and he starts to wash the feet of the disciples. Now, you got a picture. These people did not have Allbirds. They did not have Nike. They did not have Prada. These people were either barefoot or with sandals. The streets weren't paved. There were animals on the streets, so you know what else was on the streets? Peter was a what? He was a fisherman, right? What were that guy's feet like? A salty fisherman from Gloucester or New Bedford. Of course he says, no, Jesus, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus says, unless I do, you won't get it. You won't get what I'm about. He uses official religious language. You won't have an inheritance in my kingdom, huh? But in our language, you just won't get it. You gotta wash the feet of other people. And so this whole community did that night. And I gotta tell you, one of the most moving pieces was toward the end. Most people had got the lint out, trimmed the toenails, maybe even had a mani-pedi. But when I saw a man who was homeless in our neighborhood come up, sleeping on our steps, and join in that line, I watched with great humility how one of our people washed his feet, took those sneakers off. I thought, whew, there it is. There's discipleship, 21st century. And you know, it's interesting, when I saw him yesterday, he said, you know, John, I never had that done before. And I thought to myself, I wonder when the last time he had a shower. Warm water. Clean bathroom. And yet, he gets his feet washed. Dr. Jim O'Connell, Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, gets out of Harvard and Mass General, all these beautiful places, and goes to the streets and begins to wash the feet of people who are homeless because they're on their feet all the time. They're swollen and broken. They're not just sore, but they're hurting. He said it's that initial entry and connection into their lives. Jesus gave us that mandate. If you ever have the chance, come on a Thursday night of Holy Week, Holy Thursday. And then he finishes washing the disciples' feet, tells them to go out and do the same, and then breaks bread at this table, which we're about to do in a few minutes. And he says, and keep doing this. And you know what? It's 2019. For over 2,000 years, we're doing the same thing, Sunday after Sunday, Easter after Easter, at this table. And then Good Friday, we take the cross. And we're reminded that every single one of us in this church building today is carrying some sort of a cross. Some of them are ultra heavy. Some of them are lighter. But every one of us is struggling and wrestling with something. And the invitation was, don't go it alone. Whatever cross that you and I might be carrying, link it, unite it with the one who knows what it is to carry a cross. The one who has compassion. The word compassion means to suffer with. Somebody who knows your suffering and mine. So keep those prayers going. Even when we don't hear the audible voice coming back saying, I got your back, or don't worry, that cancer's going to be healed. Or your son or your daughter won't die. It doesn't happen that way. But keep that conversation going. Join the crosses that we carry. Huh? And so everybody came up and they venerated the cross. It was so moving to watch, knowing some people's stories, not knowing others. And then last night, we start out front, we light a big bonfire, and we take this brand new tall Easter candle, plunge it into the fire, and then we all come into the church, and it's in total darkness. And that one little flickering flame, see it at the top of the Easter candle? That's the only thing that's lit. And then as we sing, Christ, our light, everybody begins to light their own candles. And before our eyes, literally and figuratively, the light overcomes the darkness. The place literally becomes illuminated from that one little flickering flame. Again, a symbol, a reminder. If we have Jesus, we believe in the resurrection, if we have a real live relationship that we can talk with him even though we don't get the audible voice, but we know he's there, that he loves us, he cares, then the light overcomes any darkness that you and I experience. Yes, it's about life after death and over death. That once we take that last breath, it's not over, it's not done. 100 years, give or take, and then it's a wrap. We're in eternity, man. We're in this pinprick of 100 years when you think of the concept of eternity. It's nothing. So kick in with that relationship. Are you with me? Don't just come here on Easter Sunday looking all fine. We're all dressed up, clean shaven, all this kind of stuff. Try to be on my game. Doesn't mean anything unless we've got that real live relationship with the Lord. Because if we do, then joy will overcome any sadness that goes on in our life. That sadness won't have the last word. That depression, that anxiety, those fears won't win out. They may give us a run for our money at times, right? That's what life's about, man. But the last word is always that the good overcomes the bad. And then today. Today's all about the rising. And I love this word. The incredulity. You know that word, huh? The unbelievingness, or whatever it is, huh? Of the disciples. What's the last word of today's gospel? Remember, they did not yet understand the scripture that he had to rise from the dead. We got 2,000 years of a tradition that tells us Jesus died and he rose from the dead. They didn't have any of that. Just think now for a second to the loved ones that you and I have who we miss so deeply. If we didn't have 2,000 years of tradition behind us, what would we think? Where would they be? What would be going on in our minds? Again, it's a wrap. It's all over. But today is about the beloved disciple looking in, not having a 2,000-year tradition behind him. And when he looked in, it says he saw and what? Hello? He believed. Yeah. I just want to see if you're awake, huh? And so I'm asking you, do you believe? Do I believe? Easy to believe when it's a nice sunny day and things are going smoothly, huh? But do you and I believe when life gets tough and it's unfair and it's unjust? Even though we got 2,000 years tradition behind us, belief can be challenging at times. Now listen, I'm not an art aficionado, and I know we have the MFA right down here, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Up on the North Shore, we have Peabody, Essex, thank you. I used to live in Danvers, you think, huh? But I do have an appreciation for art. I'm not one of these guys that goes in and sits there and contemplates, you know, the painting or the object, you know, I mean, the thing forever, huh? But I have this appreciation. And I read that lots of artists use a technique called negative space so that it draws attention to the subject and to the point that they want to make. This negative space kind of reveals a hidden or maybe even a subversive meaning. And just as an example, if we're looking at a painting that's beautifully framed, it might be that the artist leaves just enough room in between the object of focus and the frame. If there are any artists here, maybe you know maybe you know better what I'm talking about, huh? But there's that space. Paying attention to the absence of something can reveal something to us. Not just looking at the object, but paying attention to what might be missing can reveal something. Just imagine this story in a different way for a minute. What if when they ran back to the tomb and Mary got there with all the spices to anoint his body, if Jesus was there sitting up, having an espresso saying, "Hey, shalom, how are you guys doing? I'm back." Huh? Just think about that for a second. I think about it with my own father. I used to yearn for that. Just say something, Dad. I promise I won't tell anybody, but let me know you're okay. How differently the story would have been. And we would have focused. What? He's back. But somehow in the negative space, with nobody there, we don't focus on him and being back. We focus on something else. We focus on ourselves, like the beloved disciple. Did this really happen? Where is he? All those things he said to us in the past, are they true? What, rise from the dead? Where? Who? What, like, do you see the process that was going on? It was more important for him not to be there and say, guys, it's okay. He appears to them later. It's more important for them to enter into that negative space where there's an absence of Jesus so they can look inside and say, like the beloved disciple, I believe. And so I'm asking that 2,000 years later. You and I are the beloved disciples. Our names might not be Mary or John in the gospel, but whatever our names are, as you and I peer into the tomb this Easter morning, do you and I believe? And what does that belief mean for us this day? I end by inviting us to bring our belief in the resurrection of Jesus, that place of absence, that negative space, to help shape how you and I see life in our lives right now. Belief in the resurrection, as I said in my letter in the bulletin, is the bedrock of all that we are. The negative space in the tomb, Jesus not being there, points us to go out and profess what we believe. And not by waving banners necessarily, he is risen, but by washing the feet of others, by being compassionate toward others in their suffering, by feeding one another. Look at our world. It's up and down. Look at our country, our government. It's a daily intrigue. Look at our church, with the lack of leadership in so many places, with mismanagement and a lack of accountability, with the true effort of some. And I am a huge fan of the current CEO of this, Pope Francis, and he's getting tremendous resistance for change to end this culture of clericalism, where the priests are separate and untouchable for their crimes. He's meeting resistance. Can you understand this? With all that's happening in our world, belief in the resurrection is what keeps me in the game. How about you? I hope you're not just here today because it's an obligation or your mother made you get out of bed and show up this morning, huh? I hope we're here because of a deep belief, trust, and hope that no matter what goes on in our lives and in the world that is not good, that the good will always triumph, and death will never have the last word. Remember, the beloved disciple, he saw and believed. Do we?